Nice people.
저희 박수 한번 하고 round of applause.
Now we move to the people.
There is so much disdain for Mark Carney on the world stage that the media in Asia wouldn't even include him in a shot with Donald Trump. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. Mark Carney and his friends in Canada's media are going to try to convince Canadians that Mark Carney had a successful trip to Asia, being gone out of the country for a week, not solving any of the domestic issues that concern our Canadian people, while Mark Carney's press releases are making all of the same flowery words that say nothing, but probably gets lost on a lot of individuals who don't appreciate that with every passing minute, the standard of living drops in this country due solely and completely to the policies of the Liberal government and Mark Carney by extension. You want a better standard of living out there and you can hear my voice. Remember, don't vote Liberal because the Liberals have got us here. Their policies have brought us to this precipice. It's nothing to do with Donald Trump. It's nothing to do with international trade. It has everything to do with our domestic economy and how we don't have one due to the policies of the Liberal government, who did not foresee having only one trading partner as a problem. Now, I'm going to cover a few things that come out of these various stops. I mean, they've been gone 5-6 days. They went to Malaysia, then they went to South Korea. And I want to show you a couple of things on how the people, the receivers, the hosts, especially of South Korea, are perceiving one versus the other, are treating one versus the other. Before we get into that, I would encourage everyone who's not subscribed to subscribe. I would encourage everybody to hit the notification bell so you are notified when I put up a new video. And I would encourage everyone who is subscribed to double check, because according to many people that I have in my comments, people are being unsubscribed. Let's get into this. We're going to open with one of the indicators how the two leaders are treated differently, Mark Carney and Donald Trump, and how they're received differently by the culture and by the countries and the people that are involved. It's the opening shots, it's the opening ceremony, or whatever you want to call it, for this couple of day meeting. And Donald Trump is coming on down what they would call the red carpet if it was, television or the Grammys or the Academy Awards or what have you. It's not as glamorous, but it's the same idea. You pose in front of all of the press. Now, you see that guy who's pointing directly at the mark on the floor. I mean, Donald Trump knows what a mark is, obviously. But that fella there is important to this story because he's an indicator of what I'm trying to tell you.
Hey, Aaron, good to see you. Nice to see you.
Everybody on stage, he had already spoken to the New Zealand Prime Minister, shaking hands. Who's that on the end? Oh, look, it's Mark Carney. Now, if you take a close look at the framing on this show, the framing tells 1,000 words. I mean, you clearly, all the cameraman has to do is turn it slightly to get it framed properly, right? Where you would have you wouldn't have that empty space on what is, as I look at the monitor, to the left side of the monitor. Slowly, he cuts Mark Carney out of the shot. I mean, it's bad for Canada, but what are you going to do? Everything has gone wrong since we elected the Liberals, so we have to start laughing. You could put two more people in that frame. They got so much space on the one side of the camera. Anybody knows. I mean, when you're there are 10-year-olds right now who understand how to frame a shot on their cell phone or whatever it may be. So don't go saying to me that this cameraman didn't know exactly what they were doing. And the slow creep on how he very carefully cut Mark Carney out of the shot, because video cameramen, or people are trained not to have any sudden movements in their camera. Like it's part of the programming, right? Like even in football and hockey and all that, it's a smooth movement when they're moving back and forth. There's no quick jerky. So he came back he came back too soon, too far, and then just went, whoa, wait a second, and slowly cut Mark Carney right out of the shot. It's not, it doesn't end there though. Watch now.
저희 박수 한번 하는 것도 좋습니다.
Round of applause.
Where's Mark Carney? Where is he? Nowhere to be seen.
Now we move to the people.
Now they're like, okay, and cut. And now everybody's supposed to walk over to the dinner. You can see above, special dinner in honor of Donald J. Trump and state leaders hosted by President Lee. But Donald Trump doesn't move. He's not even trying to move. And you remember I talked about the guy who was showing him where his mark is. Well, that's the back of him you see right there. And he's going to try to lead Donald Trump to his next location because that's his whole job, is to just usher him from location to location.
Thank you very much.
See how he doesn't move, and then all of a sudden the guy's like, whoa, wait a second. Let me back up because protocol demand that I don't be in front of him. And he's just waiting there with, with that poor smile, thinking, oh, Lord, I hope, what am I supposed to do, you know? Now, Donald Trump is receiving a world leader from the region on that stage. Everybody else keeps walking. And what we see here is Donald Trump talking to a world leader, and the world leader brought his translator with him to this conversation that's away from the dinner table, that's away from the other leaders. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is how business is actually done. This is how you do it. And as you can see, Donald Trump is very good at it. Mark Carney, nowhere to be seen. Then we move over to the table that they were all walking toward, which I'm sure is not very far from the shot. There's Mark Carney. He with his back to the camera. What I really think is funny about this shot, well, there's two things I think that's really funny, but the fact that Mark Carney is sitting square to that wall that says special dinner in honor of Donald J. Trump. Secondly, Donald Trump's not in the shot yet, but Mark Carney's as far from Donald Trump as you can be placed at a round table, which is not anything other than him saying, like in a round table setting, the people closest to the important person are the ones that are most important, and Mark Carney's quite literally as far away as possible. The South Korean prime minister stands up and basically helps him with his chair. I mean, he doesn't actually help him with his chair, but you get the point. I mean, that's all he got. He pointed his finger at him. The end. And then they sat down and started talking about, there was the president of South Korea made a speech or whatever. They all put in little translators. But that's all they got. Come on, man. That's the, what is it you like to put? You're the second largest trading partner. We share the undefended border. I mean, I don't believe that Mark Carney understands just how much of a joke he is becoming. I don't think that he appreciates. I know that, he's making a lot of money with his investments. I know that there's a lot of companies that are getting contracts for Mark Carney's, portfolio. Just the same is held true for anybody that holds stock in Brookfield. Anybody who holds stock in any of those companies is making money off of them. But his reputation, I don't know there's any amount of money in the world you could give me to make me think that I should be disrespected on the world stage with how many cameras watching. I mean, Mark Carney went into the conversation. He started the job already with a lot of money. So how much more do you need? How much more is he making? I don't really know about any of that. I know that Canadians aren't making any money. And I know that Mark Carney is supposed to be the guy who claimed that he was going to be able to resolve this problem. He's not resolving this problem. In fact, it seems that the problems have become only worse. And you say, well, yeah, but Sterling, he might have come away with some negotiated deals. Okay, I suppose it's possible. But the press releases that these two leaders have made on their particular websites doesn't indicate that. And we're going to talk about that here right away. I thought for a couple of minutes on who I should start with, Mark Carney or Donald Trump, and then I realized that Mark Carney's is just cookie cutter, said over and over the same thing over and over again. Case in point, you can see the way that he starts with his Malaysia trip. Oh, Canada, the world is more dangerous and divided. Canada's more dangerous and divided. I think you should worry about that. I find it funny that he's all of a sudden the guy who cares about security while the country itself is getting, torn to shreds by criminals. Now, there's a lot in this here that's just propaganda, just what do you call them, campaign stump speeches, just the same thing they would say from stop to stop. They make a couple of announcements. $226,000 to expand the BlackBerry Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. So just shy of $250,000. Woohoo! Everybody can retire now. That's about all they really announce. They talk about how maybe one of these Malaysian companies will invest in LNG phase 1, which is already up and running. So I'm not sure why would be we selling that to other countries when our own country needs it more. Now there's some quick numbers here. There's a couple of contradictions. Like it says the Indo-Pacific region is Canada's second largest trading partner with over $260 billion in two-way merchandise trade, but it's only 10% of our exports. It's too bad that you weren't in the room for the last 5 days with the guy that isn't the president of the country that is our number one export, that takes 75 to 80% of our. Oh, that's right. He doesn't want to talk to you because he doesn't like the way that you do business. He doesn't like the way that you behave. He doesn't like the way that you're a politician. It's easy to say that he just simply doesn't like you. The Asian region is a major global market for 700 million people, worth $5 trillion. As a group, it represents Canada's fourth largest merchandise partner with two-way trade of $42 billion. Malaysia is Canada's fourth largest bilateral merchandise partner with $5 billion going in both directions. Yeah, a lot of stuff comes from there, but not leaves here to go there. Canada and Asia are accelerating negotiation for the Canada-Asian Free Trade Agreement. Now, how do you accelerate negotiations with a group? You cannot. For each and every one of them must agree. It's just a bunch of polished answers that are designed to make you think that he's doing something other than being ignored and wasting our tax dollars. Because that's all he's really doing. It's being ignored and wasting our tax dollars. I mean, he might be doing things for his friends that we are not talking about. What I mean is he's not doing anything for Canada. In September, Canada announced a new trade deal with Indonesia. Right, and it's nearly November. You've said this Indonesia thing so many times, I can't even, whatever. You've said that already. You said in April it's going to be, by May you'll have it fixed. By June you'll have it fixed. You're not having it fixed. And now the only thing that you seem to be able to say is, no GST on new home buyers. We made a tiny little $18 a month cut to your income tax. And 2 months ago we hammered out a deal with Indonesia for them to send in all kinds of stuff to us while we send very little in return, because let's be straightforward, we don't manufacture much. So I don't know what you hope to be sending down there. By contrast, here's the release for Donald Trump's trip to Malaysia. And there's a lot in it because it's much more polished and he did a lot more. Right at the beginning, I'd like to point out, it says achieving historic peace deal between Thailand and Cambodia. So he got them to sign a peace agreement. He got them to pull back troops from the border. This is a great thing. I mean, even if it only lasts a short term, it's progress in a long-standing grievance. So this is 3 now. He's got Armenia and Azerbaijan. He's got Thailand and Cambodia. And we'll say Hamas and Israel, but I mean, that one moves back and forth with every passing minute. The point that I'm making is that Mark Carney ain't getting none of that stuff. And to be able to do that, you must be able to negotiate with the people in the room. Like when I pointed out how he shook Buddy's hand right there on the stage, ignored everyone around him, including the translator, and just, I mean, it was a tell on how good Donald Trump is at negotiation, as opposed to Mark Carney, who thinks that this is somehow I don't know, warm and fuzzy. All links for these documents will be in the description. I just want to point to one of the Malaysia contracts that he signed, right? Enhancing the U.S.-Malaysia relationship. President Trump, Prime Minister Anwar announced a transformative deal that will deliver billions into the U.S. economy. Up to $34 billion annually in U.S. LNG purchases through multi-year agreements with Petronas in Malaysia. $42.6 million annually in coal. Purchases U.S. telecommunication products and services valued at $119 million. 30 Boeing aircraft and a purchase of 30 additional, an option. If you get the first 30, you can buy 30 more at the same price. That's what that means. Purchases of U.S. semiconductors, aerospace components, data center equipment, and with an estimated $150 million. Every one of those things would be an enormous boon to the economy in Canada. LNG and coal, of course, we have great amounts of, but our government says that we shouldn't be making money off it. And I guess that makes the Americans happy because we're sending them our LNG and they're selling it at an enormous profit to Malaysia. While we sit around saying, oh, no, tanker ban. Oh, I'm going to run an ad in the United States television channels. Now, the only other country that Mark Carney released a statement on his webpage, on the Prime Minister of Canada's webpage, was Singapore. And it's a bunch of the same stuff, how Canada and Singapore have been getting along for so long, this, that, and the other thing. He met with a whole bunch of business leaders to talking about setting up a meeting, and then maybe having a meeting to set up a meeting to talk about setting up a meeting. Nothing is the point I'm making. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's the same stuff he's been saying for months. It's been the same stuff he's been saying for almost a year. There's nothing that ever comes through with the Liberal government. All they have is empty words and promises. However, we'll go to the quick facts, give him the benefit of the doubt. This was the Prime Minister's first trip to the Indo-Pacific region. His lack of productivity, he probably could have done it over the phone or via text message for all the stuff that he did. In 2024, service trade between Canada and Singapore totaled $4.6 billion. Okay, we probably would have got more from that off of aluminum into the United States of America, but don't you worry about it. We'll be talking about Malaysia or Singapore on the other side of the planet and how we can only send it there one ship at a time instead of sending 15 or 20,000 tractor trailers full of stuff. Oh, it goes on to talk about, the last one is what makes me laugh. Our countries are marking 60 years of bilateral relations this year. So for 60 years, we've had bilateral relations with Singapore. I don't want to know how long we've had bilateral relations with the United States of America, but what I can say with certainty is that when we lost the bilateral relations with America, everybody lost their mind. And I don't think until this minute anybody even understood that we had bilateral relations with Singapore. But no, and this is no shade on Singapore. This is nothing bad against Singapore. I'm sure it's a lovely place. However, if we've already had 60 years of trade with them, why has that not increased and ballooned and grown and grown and grown? And how come all of a sudden when we lose the Americans, we can't just say, don't worry about it, we have trade with Singapore? Well, I would imagine because they don't want Canadians to understand that, but these countries don't have the kind of revenue, they don't have the resources, they don't have the same mindset. They have generational houses all crammed in together. And that's the kind of thing that we need to talk about in this country. We have to talk about what you're looking for or how do you want to live? Because if you don't say it out loud, if you don't tell your government what you're looking for, they're going to give you trite like this and try to convince you that it's going to be 3-layer cake. However, Donald Trump is actually doing things, right? So now we'll talk about what he's claiming they did in Japan. In Japan. There's a lot of, everything is warm and fuzzy. And then we come into some of the arrangements that have been made. Critical energy and infrastructure investments up to $332 billion. $332 billion. $332 billion. Can you imagine what Canada could do with $332 billion? Donald Trump got this from Japan as it pertains to critical minerals. Up to $25 billion to supply large-scale power equipment such as gas turbines, steam turbines, generators for grid electricity and stabilization systems, including high-voltage direct current and substation solutions for mission-critical facilities in partnership with GE Verona. So, not a mention of wind, I guess. No solar power in that investment. AI infrastructure up to 30 billion with Mitsubishi, up to 25 billion with TKD, up to 20 billion with Fujikuma to supply fiber optic cables. Oh yeah, no. I mean, hey, listen. Mark Carney got $226,000 deal negotiated for the BlackBerry Security Center. 26 billion, 20 billion, 300 billion. Oh my Lord. 15 billion to produce advanced electronic components, critical minerals, 3 billion to construct an ammonia and urea fertilizer facility in the United States, and up to 2 billion to construct copper smelting or refinery facility in Western United States. Oh my. So Japan is going to build a smelter in the Western United States to manufacture the copper that they will give to Japan as their first customer, but at least it will be there on the infrastructure. And Donald Trump can turn to the NATO and say, look, I have a new infrastructure going up. It's a copper smelter, which of course helps with copper. I mean, forget about it. It's in everything. It's anything in the modern world anyway. 600 million to upgrade ports and waterways across the southern United States. And to facilitate the export of U.S. crude oil, 500 million to establish high pressure, high temperature diamonds. Oh man. 350 million to construct a lithium iron phosphate production facility in the United States. Toyota plans to export its U.S. made vehicles to Japan and open its distribution platform in Japan to U.S. automakers as a result of Japan's commitment to accept for sale in the Japanese U.S. manufactured and U.S. safety certified vehicles without additional testing. I guess that means that they really test them in Japan. Then they signed a memorandum of understanding on other things. And I mean, you're talking about so many jobs in all, even if only half of those investments pull through. Even if only half of those investments get off the ground in the United States of America, you're talking about the Japanese corporations infusing the United States of America with billions of dollars. We in Canada can't get, we got a $200,000 investment from the one country there, Malaysia. So I guess that's gonna keep our economy afloat, eh? I mean, that's something. Come on. Mark Carney is not to be taken seriously. He can't negotiate a trade deal. He doesn't have the personality matters, guys. Personality matters, especially when you're talking about negotiations of international contracts. Mark Carney seems to not have a single friend on the world stage that's not a direct member of certain globalist organizations or gigantic financial institutions. However, the people that he's dealing with are neither. And if they are, then I guess there's no need for them to discuss anything either way. What I do know is that Mark Carney's current switch is I'm going to find other places to sell what we're selling to the United States. And not only is he not finding other places to buy our product, but all of those countries that he's talking about are locking down trade deals with the United States to give them exactly what the United States is no longer getting from Canada. Oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. Yeah, this won't end in complete disaster for Canada at all. I'm almost sure of it. At time of recording, the White House or Donald Trump's office or Donald Trump's people have not released anything about a negotiation with China, though he did indicate that it was upcoming. So Mark Carney's desk has released nothing about Korea, and why would he? South Koreans are basically pretending like he doesn't exist. They won't even put him in the same camera shot as Donald Trump if they can avoid it. However, Donald Trump did already hammer out a bunch of deals with South Korea, and those deals impact Canada in ways that I need you to understand and that are also very infuriating. So let's already establish that Donald Trump is sending crude oil and coal to the southern parts of the world, right? To what they call the global south, which Canada could be providing, but of course we can't sail a ship off the west coast, and we can't get any of the premier or the federal government to allow us. Now that's relevant, and I'll come up to that in a minute, but I'll just read it in order. So this is the announcement of what they have negotiated with South Korea. Korean Air will purchase 103 Boeing aircraft valued at $36 billion. creating 135,000 jobs in the United States. On a separate deal, they're going to buy state-of-the-art General Electric aerospace engines at $13.7 billion. So now we're combined near $50 billion in air equipment alone. The Republic of Korea Air Force selected L3 Harris Technologies to develop its new airborne warning and control aircraft at $2.3 billion, 6,000 jobs. America's Re-Element Technology international partner will launch a U.S.-based vertically integrated rare earth system refining and magnet production complex focused on high-value mobility magnets. Why is Canada not getting in on that? Well, because we have Mark Carney thinking that you have to have 50 or 25 years till you can open up a mine. And once you do open up a mine, he wants to be there to make sure that you don't put one hair out of place or bend one blade of grass. And so we just simply cannot keep the productivity. By contrast, Korea is going to fly over a whole bunch of people with a bunch of money. They're going to invest in magnets and rare earth. They got a 365-day reprieve from China, right? Like they settled a deal at 365 days. So the Americans got 365 days to get these rare earth critical minerals and magnets up and running. And Korea is going to help them do it. Not Canada. Canada, who, has the most of it in the whole wide world. No. We're going to get it from Korea because, of course, Donald Trump can't get along with our politicians. And as far as I can tell, unless you are explicitly agreeing with everything that they say, like everyone on the far left, nobody gets along with them unless they are already part of the far left mentality. Wait, it gets worse. Korea Gas Corporation signed an agreement to purchase about 3.3 million tons of LNG via long-term agreements, including a bunch of companies. The Centrus Energy Corporation is creating 3,000 jobs in the United States because they're going to be building a uranium enrichment facility. Gee, I wish we had uranium in Canada. Oh, wait. And LSG Group pledged to invest $3 billion by 2030 in U.S. power grid infrastructure, including undersea cable, power equipment, winding wires, LS Cable, U.S. subsidy, LS Greenlink is building a $681 million manufacturing facility in Virginia. So if I understand correctly, which I believe I do, and I'll say it like that so that you can understand as well, or at least best to my ability, Donald Trump went to Malaysia and did everything that Mark Carney said he was going to do. Donald Trump went to Japan and did everything Mark Carney claimed he was going to do. Donald Trump went to South Korea and hammered out a deal that Mark Carney claimed he was going to do. The reality, of course, is that Mark Carney hasn't gotten anything done. And none of these countries are going to be dealing with us. They won't even allow Canada in the same picture frame as the United States of America, Carney and Trump. They're investing all of their extra money, all of their GDP into the United States of America. They're not going to be able to do it for both. And many of the industries that they're investing in, the Conservatives have been telling Canadian voters for years is the way that we go forward to create jobs. And Mark Carney has been trying to convince you that the whole wide world is going crazy with the solar panels, excuse me. Soon he's going to have a bunch of wind turbines running up and all down the country so we can't even plant any food. But the reality on the ground is the world is not interested in solar panels. They want things that they know they can rely on, they know that will work. Yeah, they might put a little bit of wind here and there in those parts of the world, but in the end, they revert back to nuclear, they revert back to steam power. They revert back to something that needs to have a fire to create steam, which will turn a turbine, which will generate electricity, hence the coal, you see. And so we have the United States of America making buttloads of deals with buttloads of money. Donald Trump estimates that he is now up to about $21 trillion of investment in the United States of America. Even if he gets only half, it's $10 trillion generating economy, generating jobs, dislodging anybody else that might be trying to keep up with them in critical minerals, in gas, in LNG, in coal, in all of the infrastructure, in AI, in chipsets, in copper. I mean, the list of things that Canada is not going to have, because Mark Carney has been sitting on his hands, because we have Doug Ford, Mark Carney, and all of the Liberal government in the way, because of those 9 laws. We can't get any shovels in the ground. Because of that, Canada becomes ever more poor by the millisecond. And how long until we end up like one of these countries, like, say, Venezuela or Libya, where they have the resources, but they also have a dictator? How long until we find that we are going to be turning to the United States for assistance with bailouts because our economy is collapsing? That happens all the time, and countries come running to people like Donald Trump asking for that. Yeah, I understand that Mark Carney's making a lot of money, and anybody that has investments with those companies that Mark Carney is impacting is also making a lot of money. But for me, the average, ordinary individual, middle-class Canadian, or, well, I guess what is mostly going to be lower middle-class Canadians, we are looking for solutions to our immediate problems. We don't have the money to invest. We don't have those kinds of resources. If we did have those kinds of resources, it would only end up looking like an RSP, or, it's not going to be directed kind of thing. It's not billions of dollars we're dealing with. It's not even millions of dollars that we're dealing with. We're simply wanting to live a decent life, a nice, happy life, do our part, contribute, and the whole 9 yards. I mean, that's 95% of the world I just described. That's their attitude toward it. They just want to go home, and make sure that their kids and everybody that they know is well provided for, and that's it. And then they want to go have a laugh and a joke and a good night's sleep, maybe watch something on TV. And as a result of that, they are the ones that are not being helped. They are the ones that the government is getting away on, because the government thinks that they're sleeping. The government doesn't think that they're paying attention. And those are exactly who I'm talking to. I started this channel to reach those people who need to understand you might not have a lot, but you have to get out and vote. You have to make sure your voices count. You cannot sit on the sidelines. You have to pretend like the government is the referee and you're at a hockey game. And in Canada, we yell at the ref. We yell at the ump, and we should be yelling at our politicians. Don't allow anybody to try to convince you, because you're raising your voice to the politician and looking out for yourself, that somehow you're a bad person. That's their trick. That's how they silence you. They might try to say those things, but they never answer the question, do they? They always avoid answering the thing that's got you upset. Mark Carney said the whole wide world doesn't want LNG. Trudeau before that, Stephen Guilbeault, and the current environment minister. All of them have been telling Canada that the world wants nothing from us. They're all going solar. They're all going wind turbines. None of them are. The entire Asia Pacific rim, as they call it, essentially Japan all the way down to the Philippines or whatever, Singapore, none of them are in fact going green. They are all looking for as much LNG as they can get their hands on. That's not to mention how much he might have to be able to supplement with India, or offset, with India. Of course, that's a tricky situation, because the second that the Russians stop fire and the second that the Russians accept a peace treaty will be the second that all of their grievances are forgotten and their oil will be allowed to flow around the world once again. Of course, we won't be in any position to capitalize on it. And that will mean that all of the stuff that we could be sending into the European market will now go nowhere, because the Russians will be quite willing and happy to provide it, as they've been on a war footing for a couple of years. And I'm sure if you were inside of Russia, you would see that there's lots of infrastructure going up around fuel and oil and gas, for the war effort. Mark Carney's very short-sighted, and anybody who supports the Liberal government based on this idea that you're going to harm Donald Trump, well, here you can see the proof that's in the pudding. Here you can understand that Mark Carney not only can Mark Carney not follow through on the things that he claimed he was going to be able to do with the trade negotiations, with getting jobs, with keeping industry in the side of the country. It allows, one of his representatives, one of his cabinet members standing with David Eby, as David Eby announces to the world that he's going to be trying to get spiteful with Donald Trump. None of these leaders are looking at in Canada and solving the problems in Canada. None of these leaders want to be following the example set by all of these countries. And that's the thing that we have to consider in this country. I get that you might want to tell yourself that, you have to vote a certain way because that is something that you believe in. But where in any of it do you believe in poverty? When you left the country that you left from to come to Canada, did you not leave for poverty? Because if you had the money, why would you not stay in the country that you want to associate with? And if you had to leave the country that you were born in, because of poverty or because they wouldn't provide for you the things that you needed. You have to ask yourself, if that country won't provide for you what you needed, why do you have any loyalty to them at all? And why are you not looking around and seeing what's best for you in this country, inside of Canada? Why are you not embracing what it means to be Canadian? Why would you not, as a result, vote for the party that's going to put more money in your pocket? Because if you wanted to be a poor socialist, you could have stayed where you were. If you wanted to be a halfway, a better off capitalist, then you can vote against the Liberal Party. You can vote against Mark Carney. You can vote against the NDP. And they will give you the money that you require to have a decent middle-class lifestyle and to have hospitals that function and to have all of the things that go along with a prosperous society, rather than look down over the border thinking to yourself, well, what if I just slip into the United States? Rather than do any of that. Just simply remember that in a minute when the whole country collapses down around you, that the best thing you can do is support the government that's going to be opening up the industry in this country. That includes mining, that includes oil and gas. It does not involve wind in any way, shape, or form. Solar, what are you talking about? 6 months a year, this country is covered by cloud because, it's cold up here. Oil, gas, mining, critical minerals. These are the things that this country has in a great abundance. And all we need to do is get the Liberal government out of the way, and we too could be capitalizing, not on foreign investment, but on internal investment. All of that money would stay inside of the country. And then you would see the overseas donors coming to investors coming to our country in great droves, including Donald Trump. He would be up here saying, hey, listen, I see that you've got some mining in the middle of Ontario, and, that's great. Can I have some of it now? Here's a big giant check. Instead of saying, oh, I don't like those liberals, and I would rather do business with South Korea. All right. That's just my opinion. You can leave me your opinion down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.